hi to everyone who's listening. You're listening to CKUT 90.3 FM. This is Veronica from Radyo Kapwa, one of the hosts. And for today's broadcasting, obviously, we always talked about some icebreaker. And for today, it's going to be, when was the first time that you were exposed to drag? And for me, I don't even remember. I didn't know about drag at all. I think one of the exposure that I had already was all the way back from the Philippines, and how they made it like very comedic, gay men and trans people. And maybe that was part drag, especially happening like every Sunday, maybe not. But now looking back to it, it kind of looked like drag for me. It's just more hetero, I guess, just more acceptable enough that people can still digest it for like general Filipino eyes. I wasn't. The first time I actually went to see a drag show was here in Montreal at the Wiggle Room, and that was just recently. So I would love to keep on going through different shows as well to support our kapwa, because there's more and more of our kapwa in this industry, and I think it's a very beautiful industry. We have Drag Race Philippines, which was like, it became like a boom. And also here in Quebec, we nurture a lot of our drag artists. So, it's not just a Filipino thing, it's also like a Montreal Quebecois thing. So, I do highly suggest for everyone else to also look to your local communities and see drag shows, drag events. This one also goes beyond the queer communities, So anyway, I don't want to speak further than that, but we have a booming business when it comes to drag shows, so highly recommended. And I will ask someone else to share their experiences for their first exposure to a drag.
Yeah, and the reason we're asking this icebreaker question is because we're super, super excited to be interviewing our Kapwa community member, Coco Rico, aka Rico Love, who kind of comes in and out and co-hosts with us as well. And we're so grateful for that. But we think it's also really, really important to highlight the different people in our community and the different things they're doing. So yeah, in response to what you were saying, Veronica, for me, I feel like it's hard to pinpoint when we were first exposed to drag. And the reason for that is because there's such a culture of silence around queerness in Filipino colonized culture, right? So it's like, I grew up in a queer household with queer parents, but it was like never framed that way. It was like, oh, that's your tita, that's your nanay's friend, or that's your tita, that's your nanay's roommate.
Mm-hmm.
We're never like openly talking about queerness, but auntie so-and-so lives with her quote unquote best friend. It's like, that's how it's like accessible to talk about queerness. So because I grew up in a queer household, I was really, really grateful to be exposed to drag quite early on. My parents had friends who would do drag, but I have to say that it's also great to see that there are more drag kings coming up, because there's definitely a big focus on drag queens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the whole thing, but very grateful to have been exposed to drag early on, because I think that even if I kind of move through life with the privilege of being a cis hetero woman, I do have these values because I grew up in a queer household. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I had queer parents, so I'm a queer baby, right? So it's like, I grew up in that way, and I'm really, really grateful for that exposure. And also, sidebar, one of my cousins in the Philippines is like a baby drag queen who's being mentored by a lot of the Philippine drag race drag queens. So that's really exciting and fun to watch. So if you guys want to see my pinsan, they're Anita Good Loving on Instagram. So, passing it to you, Laura.
Yes, Anita Good Loving, you said?
Yes, Anita.
Literally taking notes.
Baby drag.
Yes.
That's my pinsan. And the thing is, they're also a journalist. So they'll do drag and then write about drag stuff. It's really cute.
I love that. Drag article.
Yeah.
Article. I love it. The question was, when were you first exposed to drag?
Yes.
Honestly, I did not know what a RuPaul's Drag Race was. I would hear it in the background and then go, yeah, it's probably that car thing, for such a long time.
Yes.
Until last year, I think my boyfriend's cousin does nails. And one day I went to her place and she was like, I'm going to practice on you. And I was like, okay. And then she goes, this is what you're going to watch. You're not watching anything else. And it was RuPaul's Drag Race. And I fell in love. And that was the first time I was exposed to drag. And then face to face, like actually watching a drag show, the first time was actually you, Rico Love.
Ooh.
Yeah, I definitely feel blessed that like one of our first Kapwa Center events was like Rico Love's inaugural performance. So really, really grateful for that. How about you, Des?
I love all of these shares. I remember the first time, I remember the specific feeling that I got when I saw, I don't know if it wasn't an actual drag show, but it was, I gotten into a club when I was, 16 or 17 years old. And the club at the time was called Big Bang. And I think it was in the Village or like at the cusp of the Village, like on St. Catherine Street. And it was this humongous club with house music or techno, whatever, like electronic music back then. And I'm 16 years old again, like the excitement of being in a club underage. And then I remember, and then there was performers and there were drag queens everywhere. And I remember, like this good old Catholic private school girl, looking up at all of these shows. And I'm feeling this feeling right now, this feeling of like excitement and joy and curiosity. And I was like, more, please. So 16-ish, when I was a teenager in a nightclub on St. Catherine Street was the first time that I saw drag. So thank you very much for listening and for all of these amazing shares, and stay tuned for our interview with Coco Love.
Itong hampas ng bagyo matatagpuan sa aking isipan. Ang sanhi ng pait na namamalagi sa aking kaluluwa. At ang isa aking mong halimuyak mapapatamis muli ang simoy ng hangin. Lumapit ka, aking mahal. Sa'yo lamang mananatili at ibibigay ang sarili. Lumapit ka, aking mahal. Sa'yo lamang mananatili at ibibigay ang sarili. Ang paraiso. O aking paru-paro, tahanan ng aking pagsuyo. Ako ay naghihintay sa iyong muling pagdalo. Umaasa sa panaginip na dalhin akong ibibigay ang sarili. Sa'yo lamang mananatili, at ibibigay ang sarili, ang paraiso ikaw, aking mahal. Sa'yo lamang mananatili, at ibibigay ang sarili, ang paraiso.
Takpan na lang ang iyong bibig, di nakakatulong. Sawa na ko sa parinig, o lapitan mo ko. O alam mo ba ang tawag sa ulong ng kukulo sa iyong pagtulog? Huwag ka nang mag-aksaya ng luha sa hilaw na hangal. Ang di mapakaling tila, hindi basta-basta, basta may kasama pang sita. Iba, walang nagagawang tama. Ang di mapakaling, ang di mapakaling tila. Pagkabigay ng iyong bilin, di ko yan gagawin. Hindi mo ko masisisi, ang kulit mo kasi. Oh, huwag ka nang mag-alinlangan, ayoko ng ganyan. Bigyan mo ko ng kaibigan, kailangan ko raw yan. O alam mo ba ang tawag sa ulo ng kukulo sa iyong pagtulog? Huwag ka nang mag-aksaya ng luha sa hilaw na hangal. Ang di mapakaling tila, hindi basta-basta, basta may kasama pang sita. Iba, walang nagagawang tama. Ang di mapakaling, ang di mapakaling tila. Ang di mapakaling tila, hindi basta-basta, basta may kasama pang sita. Iba, walang nagagawang tama. Ang di mapakaling, ang di mapakaling tila, ang di mapakaling tila, ang di mapakaling tila.
There I was, an empty piece of a shell,
just minding my own world without even knowing what love and life were all about. Then you came, you brought me out of the shell, you gave the world to me, and before I knew, there I was, so in love with you. You gave me a reason for my being, and I love what I'm feeling. You gave me a meaning to my life. Yes, I've gone beyond existing, and it all began when I met you. I love the touch of your hair, and when I look in your eyes, I just know, I know I'm on to something good, and I'm sure my love for you will endure. Your love will light up my world and take all my cares away from making part of me. You gave me a reason for my being, and I love what I'm feeling. You gave me a meaning to my life. Yes, I've gone beyond existing, and it all began when I met you. You taught me how to love. You showed me a tomorrow and today, my love, that's different from the yesterday I knew. You taught me to love, darling, I will always cherish you. Today, tomorrow, and forever. And I'm sure when evening comes around, I know we'll be making love like never before. My love, who could ask for more? You gave me a reason for my being, and I love what I'm feeling. You gave me a meaning to my life. Yes, I've gone beyond existing, and it all began when I met you. When I met you, you gave me a reason for my being, and I love what I'm feeling. You gave me a meaning to my life. Yes, I've gone beyond existing, and it all began when I met you. Whoa. When I met you.
Welcome back to Radio Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. Justin here. I'm giving you a rundown of the tracks before we move on to the next segment. So first up, we had Zyled with Dilla. Second off, Kyle Julian with When I Met You. And lastly, Mojo Nova with Aliu. Please stick around for news from the Philippines from John Marvin.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Marvin Reyes, and I am a youth leader and community organizer here bringing you important news back home in the Philippines. The article is from the Philippine News Agency with the title, Filipino-American Miss USA Wins Miss Universe 2022. Filipino-American beauty queen Arboni Gabriel was crowned as the 71st Miss Universe on Sunday morning Philippine time during the coronation ceremony held in New Orleans, Louisiana, U.S. The 28-year-old bested 83 other national delegates, including Amanda Dudamel from Venezuela, who was the first runner-up, followed by Adriana Martinez from the Dominican Republic. Gabriel is also the first Filipino-American to win Miss USA in October last year. She was born in Houston, Texas, to Filipino-American Remigio Bonzon and American Dana Walker. According to the Miss Universe website, Gabriel is an eco-friendly fashion designer, model, and sewing instructor with an excitement for life. She has a bachelor's degree in fashion design with a minor in fibers from the University of North Texas. She is currently the chief executive officer of her own sustainable clothing line, Arboni Nola. Gabriel is also the lead sewing instructor at Magpies and Peacocks, a Houston-based nonprofit design house that is dedicated to using fashion as a force for good through sustainability and community impact. She also teaches sewing classes to women that have survived human trafficking and domestic violence. During her first round in the Q&A segment, Gabriel was asked the following question. Miss Universe recently made an inclusive change, allowing mothers and married women to compete next year. What's another change that you would like to see and why? She replied, for me, I would like to see an age increase because I am a 20-year-old woman that is the oldest age to compete. I think it is a beautiful thing. My favorite quote is, if not now, then when? As a woman, I believe that age doesn't define us. It's not tomorrow, it's not yesterday, but it's now. The time is now that you can go after what you want. In the final Q&A segment, top 3 contenders were asked how they would work to demonstrate Miss Universe as an empowering and progressive organization if they won the title. Gabriel said, I would use it to be a transformational leader. As a very passionate designer, I've been sewing for 13 years. I use fashion as a force for good. In my industry, I'm cutting down on pollution through recycled materials when I make my clothing. I teach sewing classes to women who survived from human trafficking and domestic violence, and I say that because it is so important to invest in others, invest in our community, and use your unique talent to make a difference. We all have something special, and when we plant those seeds to other people in our life, we transform them and we use that as a vehicle for change. Meanwhile, the Philippine contestant Celeste Cortesi failed to advance to the top 16, ending the Philippine streak of entering the pageant semifinals since 2010. Cortesi won Miss Universe Philippines crown in May 2022. This year's pageant was organized for the first time by JKN Global Group PCL, a Thailand-based media distribution after tycoon and transgender rights advocate Anne bought the Miss Universe organization for $20 million in October last year. The article is written by Azer Paroca and published on January 16, 2023. Thank you so much for listening. Maraming salamat sa pakikinig. Once again, this is John Marvin Reyes delivering you Philippine news from abroad.
Bon après-midi et re-bienvenue chez Radio Kapwa sur les ondes de CKUT 90.3 FM. Maligayang, bagong taon, magandang hapon. We are so excited to have Rico Love in studio to highlight them and interview them. So I know some of our listeners are already familiar with Coco Rico or Rico Love. They pop in once in a while and help us do different interviews and also do a lot of kind of Radio Kapwa / Centre Kapwa back end stuff. So we want to really push them to the forefront and celebrate them. I'm joined in studio today with Desiree, Veronica, and Laura's in the background, making sure we sound good as usual. And Coco Rico, welcome. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I always love popping in and talking to you guys and all these amazing conversations that you bring to the community. So I'm very stoked to be here.
Yeah, so let's jump
Woohoo!
into it right away and just start with, like I think some folks are used to hearing your voice, but like don't really know who you
Mhm.
are. Always kind of bringing in that amazing bakla queer wisdom to our conversations, and we're so grateful for that. So let's just start like simply by like introducing yourself.
Yes, yes. I actually want to share this statement that I wrote about myself and my work, and to continue like our new year transition into it. I'm going to share it with you. So it's written in the third person, so it's going to feel really nice to talk about myself apart from myself. So let's get into it. So Coco is a transdisciplinary artist experimenting in the worlds of design, performance, philosophy, and science. Coco believes that through the gratitude of the present moment, we can relearn to embody our body, nurture our nature, and be a human being. The practice is geared towards an ancestral journey that paves the way for a reciprocal and consensual future. Concerned with uncovering colonial and patriarchal fantasies, research is at the vehicle that explores this relationship to the body, the mass that Coco calls home. They are fascinated by the ways humans decorate the body with the gifts of the earth and the profound responsibility or lack of it that occurs in this interaction. More specifically, questioning where the adornments come from and naming the masks worn in the daily performance around others. As a Filipinx queer, non binary descendant of survivors of colonial and imperialist forces, and as a first generation immigrant settler on Turtle Island, these identities affect the way Coco connects with their body and the land. Adamant about breaking historical patterns of violence rooted in extraction without consideration, the origin and life cycle of materials are at the core of their making recycled garments, biodegradable objects, and visual communication. In drag, Rico debates imposed traditional roles with the audience by declaring gender through clothing, music, dance, and the reframing of masculinity. Stripped down, Coco's work imagines and develops a relationship with the one thing that will liberate us all: love.
Like, do we even need to have a show?
Right? I'm like, wow.
That was so beautiful. Oh, thank you for sharing. I'm like still processing.
You made Veronica speechless.
here's
That's
the
something.
That's a very difficult thing to do.
It's very hard. That's so beautiful. It's, I think it completely encompasses you as we know you, and it's like a very great way to introduce yourself to everyone else, right? Those who know, and those who got their heart tugged, it tugged. And so thank you so much for sharing that, and I hope that it touches a lot of our queer baklas out there. If you're listening, I know y'all are listening, so we're here, we're out. And speaking of which, when you spoke about Rico love and drag, we were asking ourselves earlier for icebreaker, and one of the first time that we were exposed to drag, and we wanted to ask you this as well, because this lead us to your Rico love drag king. What was like the first time that you were exposed to drag, Coco?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think as in time it's kind of evolved, but like I've kind of always been exposed to drag even as a kid, because clothing has always been an expression of my gender and my identity and where I am in my life. But within my immediate family, I have a cousin, Popsy, who was always just dressed in feminine presenting clothing. And we would call, him Manong Popsy. And like, it was totally normalized in my family that like, this is a person you would go to for haircuts, for beauty tips, even though, they were going by Manong. So I think that was the first time that I was like, okay, cool. So there's all this like weird ways for me to exist that's like not imposed by like what my family's expectations are of someone who is female assigned at birth. So yeah, I guess that was the first like personal interaction, the first time I had seen, I guess, a drag performance in the Western world is probably one of those like gay nights out when I was younger, 16 underage, just trying to like get into some queer culture growing up in like Connecticut, which is in, like Northeastern America. And I was like, okay, cool. So this is like, it's a vibe. But more recently to get into like drag king exposure, even though I'd been watching RuPaul like religiously because the fashions there are always so fierce, but like seeing a drag king was actually like in 2022. And my friend was DJing this queer party, and then I saw these people in like assless chaps, and I was like, wait a second. And this is like RuPaul, but like the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, this is hot. Like I love how they're performing. And then I thought to myself, I could do this. And it just kind of, by allowing myself to see myself and others performing, it opened up this new door to see what was already there, which is, this desire to perform.
See, y'all, representation matters.
Totally does.
I love that. I love that. And I love Rico Love. And as we mentioned earlier on the episode, we had the honor of, having Rico Love, the inaugural of Rico Love at our first Centre Kapwa event this August. And I just want to publicly share how much that meant or impacted myself, and also my daughter. My 8-year-old was there, and she was just like, whoa. So you are my 8-year-old's first drag experience. And like, that's just like, oh, thank you for that. And for all of the other hearts that you are just impacting, and the seeds that you are planting. I feel like, thank you to Rico Love. Is there anything else you want to tell us about, the inspiration, or where you see Rico Love going, and what the dreams are for Rico Love maybe in 2023?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's so funny because I recently moved, and I think part of it has to do with welcoming him into my life, because I was living in a smaller apartment and my closet was getting too tight, and he's just like a very demanding man. And he's like, girl, I need more room for my wigs, for my tiny shirts.
I love that. Rico needs space.
Oh, true. And it's just been such an amazing journey, just like getting to know Rico. And I'm really in a relationship with him. And it's just really awesome, because it's like through getting to know Rico and embodying more of him, I'm like allowing the masculine part of my being to be uncovered, and to have this like different relationship to it, and to like, allow it to flourish in a way that feels right for me, and not under the guise of our society and the status quo that it tries to uphold. And through opening up in that way, I've actually gotten in touch with my feminine side. So it's just been this like a crazy, sensual, erotic experience of like giving and receiving these things to myself and accessing that. And it's all just been through getting to becoming more of who Rico is. And I think I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited for what the future will hold for him, because already in the past few months I've been doing it, like the character has been changing, but it's always been like Rico, just this man who wants to embody the divine masculine, and I think a lot of that we forget. We just really focus on like the one particular notion of the dominant alpha energy, which yes, is part of that, but there's so much more that we are all, whatever sex and gender you identify and are born with, like we have access to, And I just want Rico to really show that more. And at the end of the day, Rico just wants to have fun and spread the love. So a lot more shows. I want to do a lot more collaborations. Like I'm thinking of doing like collaborations with 2 drag queens to do a kind of like Archie, Betty, Veronica, but like, burlesque style, just like really tapping into like different ways to tell a story, express whatever is repressed. And
that even rhymes. Express whatever is repressed. Ooh. I just wanted to add the fact that like also Rico Love was my first ever drag king show. So for it to be you, Coco, was it was just in my head, I'm like, oh, whoa, like Alberto is pretty handsome too, you know. You know, and then it really made me think about like those other relationship, you know, we were talking about earlier, relationship to yourself and with yourself, right? And you were talking about Rico and how Rico is, you know, opening it for you, liberating, right? So it's just a great way to also talk about like liberation as queer people and how this also connects to us trying to decolonize ourselves and how those are connected. When we ask you to introduce yourself, we also mention your ancestors and our connection to the homeland and how you are also, we're all always going to be in our journey of decolonization. But how does drag and decolonization interconnected for you?
Yeah, totally great question. I mean, I think because it really allows me to think about what it means to exist in my body, like to really define that for myself. And like, that's one thing that in my journey, my decolonizing journey, is that like I feel out of touch with my body, you know, and it's just like to get back to it, it's like, I want to do drag because it's the way for me to be consensual about my actions, the clothing I put on my body. And that's what I love about performance because it's my choice, you know? And another layer to that, as I'm exploring drag and performance into, you know, my like career as an artist, mostly doing visuals and materials, like performance allows me to have a larger conversations with the audience because there's that energy exchange. And for me, that in itself is part of when I design my performance, you know? Like I love seeing like cis men coming through with their like fag hag girls and they're just like shook because there's not a lot of drag kings and like, you know, to kind of like take up the space that's very exclusive for men, quote unquote, feels really great. But Rico's not 100% straight. You know, he's a queer man. So it's like, it causes a lot of confusion. And I'm here for that. Like, because we should, like, you know, that's the thing about like doing drag and how closely related it is also to my trans journey is that like, transness is not supposed to be defined. So let's stop defining it. And that's part of the decolonizing journey. So I think that kind of goes into that. So just to question and to reclaim our damn bodies and to consent to whatever we want to do because we have the right to say yes or to say no.
I mean, definitely, right? Like Fran's back here, and that's reclaiming is the huge piece. Reclaiming and remembering who we actually are is a huge piece of decolonization. And I loved when you said that, like, exploring who you are as Rico Love also opened up more femininity. And like, that's really what it is like we've been put in this box for so long. And like the mind-blowing realization of understanding that there is no box. Like, actually, there is no box. We have just been imposed this box. So, you know, like sometimes folks will ask me like, well, what exactly is Sant Kapwa? What exactly is Radio Kapwa? Because they're like, there are other Filipino orgs and there are other Filipino media outlets. And like, sometimes like I have to explain to folks like what it is we're actually trying to do here. And I think what it is we are creating a space for the Filipinos who have always felt othered by a more colonial Filipino culture. Right? So we're the Filipinos who want to care for the Filipinos who feel othered. And that leads me to my question, which we ask everyone of, in what ways have you been told that you weren't Filipino enough? But also in another way, I find that like a lot of Filipinos have these wounds of being told they're not Filipino enough, but we also have these wounds of being told we're too much. Right? Because we were too much and our personalities and who we are were spilling over the box, right? So I feel like drag is one of those things, right? You needed to channel your too muchness that like wasn't accepted in our colonial culture. So yeah, one part of the question is like, in what ways did you feel not feel Filipino enough? And in what ways did you feel like you had to contain all this beautiful energy, right?
Well, it's weird. Like it's a really interesting question, and like everything in my life, I sit on the in between of feeling Filipino. I feel very quote unquote Filipino when I get into drag, because I'm like, this is part of my divinity. This is something that I have been given to be able to access my masculine divine and my feminine divine. So in that way, I do feel it. But then I'm like, the definition of Filipino is based off of like this colonial root. So I'm like, I don't know. I am what I am and I'm not what I'm not. And when the energy is right with the Kapwa, that's where it's at, And like, for me, the word Kapwa, like it's me, you, and us. And I can find Kapwa in other cultures and other religions and other different lands, because at the end of the day, we all come from the same thing. So I think it's just, it's tough, but to belong, I don't know. I mean, I feel it when I'm with y'all. I feel it when I get into drag, and I feel it when I have, conversations with people that are strangers. So it's a tough question.
It's an ongoing question.
Yeah.
But you gave us a lot of things to think about.
You did. And so Kapwa, me, you, and us, are those the three words that you would use to describe Kapwa? Or, the other question we love to ask our guests is also, what does Kapwa mean to you? So in 3 words. And you beautifully said it a few minutes ago, but are there other 3 words that you would like to add?
Okay, maybe the last 3 words, I guess, that are coming to my mind is spirituality, sensuality, and eroticism as part of Kapwa.
Ooh, yes. Really going in deep within, huh? Deep within the loob, huh? I always think Kapwa is like the loob part. So anyway, thank you so much, Coco, for sharing and always visiting us here in Radyo Kapwa. We always learn so many things, like little things that we keep on talking about. Again, it just further reinforces it, right? And talking about Rico love, drag, are putting on our experience as well. I hope that our dear listeners who's tuning in right now at CKUT 90.3 FM really appreciates you sharing your wisdom, your experience, and our experiences. So thank you so much for everyone who's listening to us.
Mabuhay! Maraming salamat!
Thank you.
Love you guys.
What a wonderful conversation. So insightful to hear about Coco's experience. Coco's really killing it on the scenes. And let me just chime in here with some personal experience as a person who works in concerts with the public a lot, so specifically in live sound. So since the beginning of the pandemic, live sound has been kind of down. It came back up, it's been revamped, and I was graduating around the time where live sound was coming back because of the demand for concerts and cultural gatherings. So I got thrown into the field, and let me tell you, it's not always been so easy. Live sound, like public speaking, like performing, just curating something for an audience, it's really stressful, and it requires a lot of communication and understanding from everyone on the team. And I got a lot of that from Coco. So shout out to you, Coco. I'm sure I made mistakes along the way, but I am so excited to be able to work with people like you. So that's pretty much it for my personal experience. Let's just keep going. We'll slow down here and listen to some music. Up next, we got Jake Zyrus with Miss You in the Moonlight. And then after that, we have Paulo Sandeas with A Different Shade of Blue. Stick around for community announcements after that before we wrap it up. For now, enjoy the music.
I've been so lonely, so far from you. Now these rainy days do get to you. I can't even remember what it's like in a sunny day. Please come back to me. I miss you in the moonlight. I miss you in the sunshine. I miss you by my side every day. Whoa, oh, oh, I hear you whispers, those I love you. Sometimes I didn't listen. I'm sorry about the two. It broke my heart in pieces when you moved away. Please come back to me. I miss you in the moonlight. I miss you in the sunshine. I miss you by my side every day. I miss you by my side every day. Oh, oh, oh. Darling, I miss you tonight.
You'd love somebody like me. Just when I thought my heart had turned to stone, now turn to you whenever I feel alone. No one ever thought you'd be laying right here next to me. Who'd have thought you'd love somebody like me? It's always been you. The seasons change, my love remains forever. Even in the moments that we ain't together. 'Cause skies that take a different shade of blue.
Welcome back to Radio Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. This is Justin bringing you community announcements. The Union for Gender Empowerment is a trans-positive and anti-racist feminist organization that operates as an alternative library and co-op and advocates for social justice. Tonight from 6 to 9 p.m., they will be hosting a coffee hour discussing in light of McGill's response to the transphobic speaker at the Faculty of Law, room 413 of the SSMU building. For more details, check out their Instagram page at UGE Collective. Full Circle Montreal is a program for QT BIPOC youth from age 14 to 25 years old. On Thursday, January 26th, they'll be hosting a crochet circle. Sign up with the link in their Instagram bio at fullcircle_Montreal. Filipinos of Montreal are now taking nominations for their Filipino Heritage Month series. If you know someone that you think should be featured, email the team at filipinosofmontreal@gmail.com. Head and Hands is hosting Legal Clinic this week. Today on criminal and tomorrow on employment, privacy, and human rights, 6:30 to 9 p.m. for both days. You can fill out the intake form with the link on their Instagram bio at head_and_hands. The Refugee Center will be offering community art workshops every Friday from 11:30 to 1:30, except for the last Friday of every month. For more information and other programming, visit their website at therefugeecenter.org. That'll be all for Radio Kapwa's episode for this week. Have a great one. Magandang hapon. Catch you in the next one. Take care.
Liberation for one is liberation for us all. Tuloy ang laban.